All right, good afternoon, everybody. As she said, my name is Josh Woosley. I'm responsible for our mine planning and geology for our East region for CEMEX, and going to be talking today about the recent acquisition that we made entering the aggregates market here in Newfoundland. Just brief agenda, we'll, overview of the company, talk a little bit about the acquisition and the market, and then, talk about, what kind of our plans are moving forward with this operation. So to talk a little bit about us, just to get started, so CEMEX is at its core. We are a vertically integrated construction materials company, so encompassing everything from cement, aggregates, ready-mix concrete, all the way in through urbanization solutions. So very large business, 46,000 employees worldwide, over 1,200 ready-mix concrete plants, and 69 marine terminals and over 60 cement mills globally. So talking a little bit further on that, just to mention a bit about sustainability, it's a true core value for CEMEX. So we are the industry's first net zero CO2 concrete solution, and we have some of the most ambitious goals in the industry as far as moving towards sustainability. So a goal by 2030 to be below 430 kilograms of CO2 per ton of cementitious product, and then by 2050 to be a completely net zero company. So, quick overview. In May 2023, we completed the purchase of the assets of Atlantic Minerals in Newfoundland. This was the aggregates quarry, maritime port, and processing plant on the Port-au-Port Peninsula. This is a Florida DOT certified product, has 240 million tons of proven reserves at it currently, representing 12% of our total U.S. reserve base for the company, and an unproven resource representing over 1 billion metric tons. So this one site alone with this acquisition now represents 60% of the reserves and resources in our entire East region that we have. So this has been a very important acquisition for us. It's been very good for our business to be able to move in here and secure the future of our East region. And in addition to that, we're the largest private employer in the Port-au-Port Peninsula and the Stephenville area. So the deposit, pretty substantial, 1,000 hectares of mining lease, 2,000 hectares of mining claims, and a potential 100-meter total thickness of mining in the deepest portions of the deposit. So as you can see, this represents a very significant opportunity for us on the material side. So just talking a little bit about where it is. So we're located in the Lower Cove Quarry. It's located in the Port-au-Port Peninsula of Newfoundland, mining primarily the St. George's group, limestone and dolomites. So we have 2 current units that we're currently mining there as far as for product market. So that would be our high calcium, which is our Costa Bay limestone, and then our dolomite, which is the Katosh formation. So historically, this has been what Atlantic Minerals in the site had always gone after, primarily putting those into chemical markets, specifically going into primarily steel was the main things that they were going into. So with CEMEX, we're opening up a little bit and looking more at what's there. So we have the overlying Agathuna formation, which historically has always been a stripping, unit for the site. We believe that there's significant aggregate potential in that, so a way that we can come in, reduce waste, not have stockpiles and waste left over at the end of the mine. And then we're also exploring the Boat Harbor formation, which is the underlying unit of the full deposit. So being able to increase the amount of resource and reserves that we can get from the same surface disturbance area. So talking a little bit about the chemical grade, the limestone and the dolomite, it has some really interesting applications that it can go into. Gives CEMEX the opportunity to get into some markets historically they haven't ever been a part of, such as, as an aggregates and cement company, you're usually selling hardness and physical properties, whereas this, you start selling chemistry. So lots of different applications that it goes into, from building materials all the way through animal feed additives, steel additives, roofing granules, lots of things like that, even all the way into glass and plastics. So talking specifically about building materials, what high calcium limestone that's ground especially is really good at is because it's a non-reactive fill, is it's really good at replacing expensive ingredients in final products. So thinking things like plastics and paints and rubber, it's really good at taking those constituent ingredients that are very, very high dollar and being able to spread them out further and make them go a lot further. So goes into things like carpet backing, paint, paving stones, luxury vinyl tiles, and then all the way through, like I said, paint, caulk, grout, joint compounds. really, really interesting how many different applications you can get into. So talking more about the reserve. So this is showing our east region, which consists of our Florida operations and our operations here in Newfoundland. So as you can see, this has been represents now over 60% of the entire region's reserves at this one site. So we're looking at further expansion. We're looking at valorization of, additional overlying and underlying units. And really, we're investing in the long-term future here. This is a deposit that's going to take us, not like a typical type of mine, that would come in where we're talking about a 15, 20-year lifestyle. I mean, we're talking a century plus, here that will be involved in this region and be involved in this community. So one thing with it, though, is previously to this purchase, my region was actually known as Florida Aggregates. So with the acquisition here in Newfoundland, they forced us to change the name because it didn't make a lot of sense for Florida Aggregates to encompass Atlantic Canada as well. However, after being here for about a year and a half, there's a lot of similarities between the two regions we've actually noticed. So we both have a local economy heavily involved in fishing. We both love the outdoors. We have beautiful white beaches. And really the biggest similarity that I found is every winter, most of our population is Canadian. So wanted to talk a little bit about kind of the market dynamics, what we're supporting with this operation. So currently we're importing into the Port of Jacksonville through our Dames Point Marine Terminal. We have planned expansions into the Port of Tampa and the Port of Everglades. So the Port of Tampa one has been approved and we started construction of that project. That will be about a 2 million ton a year import terminal that we're looking at there. And it's supporting our existing Florida business. So we have 2 cement plants, 15 aggregate quarries, 22 distribution terminals throughout the state, and 14 concrete block plants and 92 ready-mix concrete plants. So it's a significant business that this operation will be supporting. So there's a lot of drivers of growth in Florida that I'll talk about, as we get in here. So there's really high demand for concrete, significant population growth, hurricane building codes, and infrastructure development that I'll explore a little bit on the dynamics. So like we had said, our primary interest in this is to support our Florida business. So we're 3,000 kilometers to Jacksonville, 3,200 to Fort Lauderdale and Miami, and 4,000 kilometers to Tampa by ship. So that brings up the question that I've been asked a dozen or so times so far just this conference is, why are we here? Typically aggregates do not travel more than about 100 kilometers from source to final product. So there's some really interesting things about Florida that allow this site to be, competitive in the local market supplying in. So the first off being, there's significant demand. So the state of Florida consumes approximately 100 million tons of crushed stone per year. There's population centers are concentrated on the coastline with deep water port access. And the biggest one is there is a lack of local sources for DOT grade and commercial quality aggregate. So to talk a little bit about that first one, the lack of the geologic resource. So most of Florida's limestone is unsuitable for construction aggregates. There's very significant local restrictions that are on it. So in fact, roughly 80% of the limestone aggregate that's used in the state of Florida actually comes from Miami-Dade County, specifically an area in the western portion of it known as the Miami-Dade Lake Belt. So if you see the yellow unit on the map is the Miami limestone, it is by far and away the best source of limestone aggregate in the state of Florida. It makes the best material, the best roads. It's really doesn't compare to anything that's located in the rest of the state. But the issue with that is that approximately 90% of the surface outcrop of that unit is covered by something known as Everglades National Park, where it will never be mined. So with that, the state of Florida is running out of local sources. So the expectation is that within 25 years, all 100 million tons that are used annually will have to be imported. Because part of that is there's a very unique mining style that's used there. So one of the examples that we give is, there's a very different relationship with water there than there is in most of the places, that mining operations exist in the world. So depending on the seasonality, the wet season versus the dry season, our water table is anywhere from about 30 centimeters below the natural topo to about 10 centimeters above it. So with that, there's a very unique mining style that takes place. It's very intensive in preparation, and it's very land intensive. So we use large electric drag lines to excavate below the water table and to move that material. But when you talk about the land intensivity of it, our largest quarry in Florida is our FEC quarry in Miami, where I spend most of my time. We mine about 40 hectares a year of surface disturbance there. With that, we're getting 375,000 tons a hectare out of that, versus comparing to our Lower Cove operation where we can get 1.8 million tons per hectare. So just based on the mining style that we have, the ability to go down with depth, we're able to extract a lot more material here with much less surface disturbance than we can there. And then talking a little bit about the market. So there's an extreme high demand for concrete, aggregate, and cement in the state. So 80% of the cement goes into concrete. Roughly, like I had said, consuming about 120 million tons of total aggregate a year, with 100 million tons of that just being crushed stone. And so that's going into things like single-family homes, commercial development, things like that. And then they have significant population growth. So the fastest growing state in the U.S., now the third most populous state in the country. So we have 22.6 million residents in Florida as of the last census that we did in 2020. The 5 fastest growing metro areas in the United States are all located in Florida. That significant population growth really comes out to, we've had over 1 million new residents that have moved in since 2020, with 359,000 moving in just 2023 alone. So with that, you have a per capita consumption of 11 tons of aggregate per year for every single resident. So you can quickly see is, not only is there already this significant demand in Florida that is being constrained by the local sources, but the demand is growing. And a lot of that comes down to the way we have to build houses in Florida. So all new construction homes in the state of Florida since 1994 are required to be Category 5 hurricane rated. If you live in Florida, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when you are going to be exposed to a Category 5 or a significant hurricane of some kind. So you have to build houses to be able to support that. So what that means is there are essentially no wooden frame homes being built in the state of Florida now. All the single family homes and all the construction is being built out of concrete block. So all new development projects also have to be raised to be outside of your federal flood zones. So like we have examples of where there are subdivisions that are being developed where they're putting in 10,000 homes that the entire area is having to be brought up 2 to 3 meters in elevation, to be able to build those homes at it. So you can see, significant demand there. And what that all works out to is roughly 500 tons of aggregate are required for every new home being built in Florida. And this is showing an example of what those building codes mean. So this is Hurricane Ian in Fort Myers in 2022. This was a Category 5 direct strike to the city. You can see the effects of the new construction homes versus the older pre-Hurricane Andrew homes that were built in there with the modern building codes. The modern homes required simply drain the water out of them, repaint them, and the house was livable within weeks, whereas the older homes were complete and total losses. So that's just showing the example of why, that concrete is required like that. And then we also have significant infrastructure development. So we're looking at $68 billion of total investment over the next 5 years on infrastructure development. With that, every kilometer of 4-lane highway in Florida is going to require 60,000 tons of aggregate. So roughly a shipload coming from our Lower Cove quarry for every kilometer that'll have to be built. So to talk a little bit kind of about the actual quarry and what we're doing there and planning to move on to it, we wanted to kind of go over some key changes that we've had in the development plan, since we've been able to take it over. So one of the biggest ones is we have a large area known as the White Hills. We've been able to come into that and delay the development there. So one of the benefits of Atlantic Minerals being acquired by CEMEX and coming and joining a very large company is significant access to capital. We can approach stripping differently. We can approach lots of different projects differently because we're no longer worried about month-to-month cash flow, and we can amortize over long periods of time. Now with that, I'm sure Vaughn here could say when he was working with Atlantic Minerals, I don't think he ever had to have a meeting to prepare for a meeting before, but we're getting him used to working in the bureaucracy. So with that, that's just an example of, this was a major project that AML was planning to kick off, developing a brand new pit, opening up new surface disturbance. They were actually planning to start that next year. Since CEMEX has come in, we've taken a different approach on stripping, a different approach on initial pit development. We've been able to delay that 5 years out, to be able to get more resources from our current actively disturbed areas. We're also focusing on significant growth in future markets. So like we said, it represents the largest single site reserve acquisition in our company history. And it's going to be critical for the future of our Florida markets. And so we're already contributing significant capital improvements to the project, and we have many more planned. So currently, the plant is running at about 2.5 to 3 million tons a year. We're looking at getting that into the 8 to 10 million ton a year range. So to be able to do that, that's going to take significant investment in the plant. That's going to take significant investment in the infrastructure that we have. One of the really big ones we're looking at is our current ship loading system and replacing it with a full-scale dock and a new ship loader system to be brought in. And we're also bringing a long-term vision for exploration projects. So as we had said, with AML being a small family-owned company, they weren't able to spend the money that needed to be spent on exploration projects to get the information that you really want. So most of their drilling was focused on one bench at a time in short time intervals. With CEMEX being able to come in, we're able to expand that a little, get more information with each drill hole that we're doing. Gave the example of, it's roughly a 100-meter deep deposit. Our average drill hole depth was 30 meters. So with us coming in, we're taking a different approach, drilling full deposit depth with every hole and being able to create mine plans and resource models that are decades out instead of, ones that are based on, 1 to 2 year blocks. So to be able to really focus on being, much more planning going into what we're doing. And so to kind of summarize that, this is showing really what our 5-year plan is out here on the site. So we're still planning within the next 5 years to move to our White Hills area, which is located where you see the green and the purple drill holes there in the center. We have a significant amount of exploration work that needs to be done there before we can get into it, but we're looking at 25 to 30 drill holes a year of exploration work on this quarry, better geochemical testing, better geophysical surveys, and then really focusing on what all is out here that we can use. What are the historically, non-ore units that can be converted into reserves, things of that nature. So with that, that is all I have.